If you're going to climb, you need to know some knots. And while there are always more knots you can learn, today we are demonstrating the 5 knots I started my kids out with because they are foundational to the rock climbing they wanted to do. The figure 8 retrace, clove hitch, girth hitch, figure 8 on a bight, and autoblock. Hi there all, I'm Jason. Famous Yosemite climber Jim Bridwell once said he only knew 4 knots. While that may have been said tongue-in-cheek, there is actually a lot you can do with just a few knots at your disposal. Today we'll be demonstrating the figure 8 retrace, clove hitch, girth hitch, figure 8 on a bight, and autoblock. Why these 5? These are the knots I wanted to make sure my kids knew before we took them on their first multi-pitch climbs. With these knots, they are prepared for the actual climbing, but also for the potential of needing to rappel down multiple pitches should emergency or weather come up and force us to reverse quickly. Before we get started, one note. We are demonstrating one way to tie each knot, but there are always more than one way to do them. The way that we tie the knots is repeatable for us, and that is key. But it also leaves our knots dressed or without unnecessary crosses or overlaps. Dressed knots are stronger, less likely to fail due to rolling, and are easier to check for correctness. So first, obviously, the figure 8 retrace is used primarily for tying into the climbing rope at our harness, so we'll demonstrate it that way. First, we measure out about 2.5 feet or 3/4 of a meter of rope. Then we create our starter 8 loop by crossing the free end on top of the standing end, wrapping it all the way around, and then moving it through the eye from the top side. Now we take the free end and lace it through both hard points on the harness from bottom to top. I then rotate the starting 8 until the strand moving into the first hard point is on top of the loop. Now I'm going to rethread the free end through and around so that it matches the weave of the existing starting loop. I began by placing the end through the top because the strand coming out is on the top. And in this case, I want to use the narrow side of the gap, which will stop us from getting across at the far end of the loop later. We continue our retrace by following our strand around and then under the standing end. Now around again and under the bight that is running through our harness, still retracing the weave, and now back through, this time using the wider section of the gap. Now I want to take the curve of the 8 that is farthest from us and flip it towards us. We then pull each combination of the 4 strands to tighten. We want to leave at least 6 inches or 15 centimeters of tail. There are multiple ways to get the tail out of our way. A simple overhand, 1 wrap, or a barrel knot, multiple wraps, cinched up against the main knot can do the job. The next knot we used was actually not a knot at all, it's a hitch. A knot ties the rope to itself, a hitch ties the rope to something else. We use the clove hitch for tying into the anchor at each belay stance. There's a way to do this on lead and a way to do it not on lead. What's the difference? Let's assume that when you are on lead, you may only have one hand free, so you need to be able to tie the hitch one-handed. But if you saw last week's video, you saw that draping the rope over a carabiner, which is the first move in a one-handed clove hitch, can actually cause a belay from the top to fail if a fall happens while you are placing that rope over the carabiner. So for our boys, we were tying the hitch in the air and then placing it on the anchor master point. To tie a clove hitch in the air, first push a loop so that the horizontal strand is behind the vertical strand. Pinch that junction to hold it. Now using the same hand you pushed out, pull another loop, and the pulling action will make the vertical strand be behind the horizontal strand. If you have 2 vertical strands that are on opposite sides, one in front and one behind the horizontal strand, you did it right. Now take the loop that is behind and cross it in front of the loop that was in front. And that is going to be the point that you will place on the carabiner. Now I move to the 3 knots we need for a safe rappel. To be clear, there is a lot more to safe rappelling than rigging the system with the right knots, but it all starts with that. First is the girth hitch. We extend our rappel devices away from us, and you can watch a short video on why we do that. You need to begin by girth hitching a sling through both hardpoints on your harness, like we did with the figure 8 retrace. Now we pull one end of the loop through the eye of the other loop. It's that simple. Here's where the figure 8 on a Bight comes into play. By adding this knot to our extension runner, we can make it redundant. To tie the figure 8 on a Bight, we make the same moves we made forming the starter loop of the figure 8 retrace. For a rappel extension, we want to choose a point about halfway up the sling. We take the Bight and cross it in front of our standing end, then wrap it around the back and all the way back in front to the standing end, and then drive the Bight through the eye from that front position. We dress any crosses before we pull the tighten. To finish making the rappel system, we put the rappel device's carabiner through each loop that is on either side of the knot, and then take the free Bight and clip it to our belay loop. Now, should any one strand get cut, the other side of the configuration is there to keep us connected to our device. For those who are wondering why the figure 8 on a Bight versus an overhand on a Bight, it's just because the figure 8 on a Bight is easier to untie after it gets loaded. And now we need our backup hitch for the rappel. If we should ever let go of our rappel ropes due to rockfall or some other kind of injury, this hitch will keep the rope from running through our rappel device and dropping us to the deck. An Autoblock is a very simple hitch. We start with a carabiner clipped to our belay loop and with one end of a loop of cord also attached to the carabiner. Now we simply wind the two strands of cord around the rappel ropes like a barber pole, making sure not to unnecessarily cross strands of the cord. Each wrap we do creates more friction. I usually make 4 wraps and then clip the free end back to my carabiner. I would add wraps with skinnier rappel ropes or wet rappel ropes, or anytime I need more friction. I then make sure to lock that carabiner. I can now yank the rappel ropes up as a test to make sure that my Autoblock will catch the ropes. So there you have it, 5 knots that I made sure my kids knew before we went out on a multi-pitch climb. As you can see, they're kind of foundational for climbing applications because they're the knots we use the most. Thanks for watching this video. Please hit that like button and share this video with others. If you haven't yet, please subscribe and ring that bell, and you can check out our website at shortguysbetaworks.com to find gear lists, all of our videos, and additional thoughts and information. What knots do you find that you use the most in the outdoors? Rock climbing, camping, hiking, and alpine environments all demand different things from us. Let us know in the comments. We'll see you next week and keep on getting more out of that big outside.